My grandfather, he farmed. I don't know what the location is. Still Creek and Douglas Road. It's a 5-acre farm, and parked conveniently in front of the farm was the interurban station. Oh, maybe I should stand up. Okay, I'll just stand. Okay. I was just saying my grandfather had a farm on Douglas Road and Still Creek, and this is at the turn of the century. We don't have records exact time, but I'm just going by the year of my mother's birth was 1912. My mother had 2 elder sisters, followed by the 2 younger brothers. Now, my mother, her name was Suying Laura, or to her Caucasian friends, sometimes was Jung. She grew up in this area, and she often commented about trudging up the hill to Douglas Road School with her friend Sadie Bowie. Now, she was born in 1912, left the farm 30 years later, but 17 of those years was spent on the farm. Now, here's a picture of her, so her personality sort of comes out in that picture. Okay? It's like, don't tell me what to do, right? So, she worked on the farm, and I just thought of it today. It's right in front of me, but I thought, well, she was the only child that was left on the farm because the 2 older sisters were married off when they were teenagers. But she would have nothing to do with arranged marriages. I mean, that's that look on her face, right? And then her 2 younger brothers, of course, being males, you're allowed to continue school, right? Whereas she had to work on the farm. So that's what happened with her. And I just hope when I was organizing these comments for today, I just hope that you can understand how you will see it interconnect from way back from my grandparents' days to my present life today. Okay? Yes, thank you.
My dad got I'll tell the historical backstory a little bit later, but my dad was able to get a veterans land grant, and with that loan he was able to purchase a 5-acre parcel of 5-acre farm on Burn Road. And I think it was originally like a peat bog that had been drained off, and so there was already, as you can see from that picture there, this is like chest-high brush. So when he got the parcel, there was a lot of work to just even clear the land off of that vegetation in order to even make it a working farm. Luckily, with the Veterans Land Grant, it comes with a stipend. Although he cleared the land during the day, and he did a night shift at a produce wholesaler downtown as well. So in order to survive. So anyway, and this is in '49. A year later, that's me. So that's the start of our connection to Burnaby. Although my dad, prior to '48, he worked on a farm on Marine Drive somewhere. I'm not sure which farm, but he worked on a farm there, and I guess probably got some skill set there doing that. So okay.
Yeah.
How long did you want me to carry on? Okay. The main outlets for our farm at that time were Kelly Douglas. I don't know if any of you remember that. They were up on Kingsway. McDonald's Consolidated. They were on the far end, the east end of Burnaby, near on the border with New West. They were the wholesalers for Safeway. Kelly Douglas was a Super Value wholesaler, and we also had two exclusive with the New Westminster Woodward's Food Floor and the Guilford Food Floor in Surrey. So those were our two. We were the only growers for those two stores while our stuff was in season. So and as far and the farm itself is still a farm. The family still owns the farm. It's rented out. There's another farmer who actually supplements with our 5-acre piece with his. He's got a 10-acre piece up on the old Marine Drive around 12th Avenue. So he farms both those. I think he's got a piece up in Surrey too. So anyway, so it's still a working farm.
Okay, this is my mother when she was 15. So her sisters were a few years older. So these were 3 girls that grew up on the farm. They don't look totally Chinese though, and I've always right. And all 3 of them have some other mixed blood in them, right? But we've never found out about that. But I think I will. I think I will get my DNA done soon. Okay, according to my mother, she never drove when we were kids, but she drove the farm truck. All she said was she'd be harvesting the vegetables and so forth. And her dad used to go to the cannery to pick up the fish heads to make fertilizer. So in speaking to my cousins, because I was 2 years old, so I don't remember anything about what they grew and so forth. She said, one of my cousins said, they're a few years older than I am, but they said, and every weekend, because once my aunt married, they moved to Fraser Mills in Coquitlam. So those older cousins, apparently headed by the eldest brother George, used to go to the farm every weekend, and we had to go and cut rhubarb and lettuce, and she says it in sort of a reluctant tone. And then a number of years ago, my front yard needed redoing because it was starting to look tired looking, so I decided to re-landscape the whole yard. And then my cousin George drove by. He drove by quite often. Then he stopped by one day. He says, "What are you doing?" I says, "Well, I'm trying to make it look fresher than it was, because we've been at home 40 years." And so he said he was marveling at the garden, because I've spent a lot of time in the garden since I retired. And he says, "Well, you must take after your grandpa. He had the largest lettuce you've ever seen, right?" And he said, so I guess that's the legacy from my grandfather, right? Now, going back to my mother, the old maid getting married at 30, I could see where she would say, "There's no way I'm going to be matched off," you see. And so my Aunt Annie had moved over to Toronto. Of course, we saw her very sparingly over the years. And my Aunt Maida was down at Fraser Mills, so we have a closer connection to them. So my mom also apparently was the babysitter for, those days when the brother got married. Everybody moved in, so she was the babysitter for the nephews. And she actually did raise one of my cousins till she was ready to go to school. So Emma, the cousin, once said to me, "Well, she was like my second mom," right? In visiting my cousin in Toronto, just 2008, the cousin said to me, her mom used to laugh and said, "All the guys used to come to the farm just to take a look at her," right? So, yeah. There was also life beyond the farm. Balance of activity, all work and no play was not my mother. She, on the weekends, I don't know why, but on the weekends, she was always allowed, because the tram station was parked right in front of their place. So on the weekends, apparently she was allowed to go into the city And I'm sure she fancied the life of the city too. But she went to help the particular G family because in those days, a lot of the elders couldn't speak English. So she said she used to do their banking and do any interpreting that they had to do. So she would go there. But I know she was seen around town too from other people. And then they say, all of a sudden she disappeared. We don't know what happened to her, right? After she left the farm, she ended a simple life at Fraser Mills. Now, although my grandparents and the family lived out, I guess, what we used to call the boondocks, right? Because, Burnaby just full of bushes, right? They hosted a lot of company, and I guess because of the train station right in front of them, they were involved with the village association, the Hoyen Gong Saw, right? So they, I guess, how everybody knows everybody those days, sort of thing. So they would visit them a lot, and my grandparents were very involved with the association, despite the fact they lived down in Burnaby. And I guess the community reference was shown when my mom said that the overflowing display of wreaths at their funeral, she considered a waste of money because she thought, but then in Chinese term, it's who attends your funeral at the end is the reference, right? So 1942 was when she married, and that was the end of her farming days in Burnaby. She located Fraser Mills. But my parents continued the self-sufficiency by raising their own chickens and ducks with the odd goose thrown in the mix. And they grew all their own vegetables and loads of garlic, because my dad used to grow lots of garlic to sell to Chinatown. What's the next picture? And then
This one?
this is my mom, the farmhand. Okay, and this is the. We tried to get pictures of the farm, but I really don't have pictures per se, except everything was taken at the side of this house. All the pictures are taken beside the house. But this is the 1940 flood, and we think that is perhaps the greenhouses at the back. Okay, so yes, that was a later picture, but that's the only picture I had. Yeah. That's oh yes, right. And okay, this is taken when she was 28, and that's when she was 30 when she got married to my dad. Right? So, and see, in those days when you had pictures taken, the studio supplied you all the outfits. So she still doesn't look Chinese, right? Well, often the people would come to the door when we lived in Coquitlam, and they said, "You're not Chinese." They wouldn't believe her, right? Because she spoke English really well. She's a Canadian, right? So. But she still has that look in her eyes. So.
Unlike Julie's, life on our farm was really long hours. 15-hour days, starting at 6 in the morning, 6.5 days a week. So when you had produce for sale, so I guess work started early in March because you have to prep all your seedlings for the first plant. A lot of your first crops like lettuce, celery, cauliflower, things like that are all planted as seedlings because if you waited for them to germinate from seed, it would just take too long. So a lot of the first crop is done in a greenhouse and then transplanted right onto the soil. Then when the temperature and whatnot, weather was better, then you direct seeded at that time. But a lot of things like celery and whatnot, because of the long, there was a continual, we'd always do transplants on those because it's just too long. That's the way you extend your growing season that way. So during the summer, when the greenhouses aren't used anymore, my mom grew all her Chinese veggies in there, and she grew all the winter melon, hairy melon, the bitter melon, all that kind of stuff was in vines all through the greenhouses. So that's just for our own, not for sale, but just for our own consumption for family and things like that. stuff we grew on the farm were we didn't actually sell any of the Chinese veggies. We just grew for our own consumption, but things that we grew for Kelly Douglas and Safeway and Woodward's, things like radishes, green onions, all the different kind of lettuces, head lettuce, all the fancy lettuces, carrots, beets, celery, cauliflower, squashes. That's Mom and Dad picking carrots there. Squashes, and then we got into just starting kind of a burgeoning nursery service. We through the two Woodwards originally started with $1.49. I think we started doing bedding plants, so things like tomato plants, pansies, and marigolds. Just those three things that we started again using the greenhouse for, and started that, and that actually turned out to be quite an interesting sideline. It was easy to do, very little work, and the payoffs were really good. So, I guess so. During because we didn't have any coolers or any refrigeration, orders were picked every day. So you got on the phone early in the morning, you got on to the wholesalers, you got your orders for that day, and then you went out and harvested them, cleaned them, packed them. The two wholesalers, Kelly Douglas and McDonald's, they were afternoon deliveries, but the two Woodward stores were 6 o'clock in the morning deliveries. So those were first off, and then we delivered the rest of the. So we had to. So you took orders from several buyers, and then you had to stage it so that if for the afternoon run, those are the first things you have to pick. And then you work later on in the evening for the early morning run the next day, kind of thing. So, yeah. Just a quick note about my mom. She was other than helping along with helping on the farm, she was also the cook. She was the nurse. She did all her own home remedies. She did liniments for bruises, cuts, scrapes. She did tonics for if you got a cold. And then she was a great cook as well. She cooked all different kinds of Chinese. I wish I'd paid attention back then, but I could never duplicate any of the stuff. But she cooked a huge variety of stuff from that she got taught from her mom and whatnot. So I just wanted to mention that. And as Julie mentioned, our connections, they go, even though we were out in the boonies, because Burnaby is considered way out in the boonies, we would only be able to get in once a week because Vancouver Chinatown was still our main hub of connection, I guess, to friends and relatives. Mom was regionally active in a downtown society called Yushan, and that was the sort of the clan association that our family and so all our relatives belonged to that, and all our friends from the same village even belonged to that organization.
If you want to finish showing some of the pictures.
Oh, okay. Yes, just one more. That's some of our some of those squashes are like a couple hundred pounds. A couple of shots from the farm.
Well, first of all, I never thought of myself as being a historian, but my interest in letter writing from the time I was 11, because my mother just gave me that job and it became my permanent job to write to Aunt Annie. That's how it all started. So then when I retired, I became interested in card making. Then I went to scrapbooking, and all those interests lend itself because you're collating and collecting and researching, getting materials, right? So that's how I started. So, but also the importance to me, like I say, about 120 years ago, my grandparents arrived here in this land of hope and glory. Today, I stand here celebrating their humble beginnings. Now, thanks to the Burnaby Library, the Historical Committee, and Burnaby Museum, I'd like to thank them for this opportunity in sharing my sentiments about the conscious awareness of the profound influence of our ancestors. They've given me a groundedness above all. Their resilience, devotion, and perseverance has given me the courage and confidence needed to examine my attitudes, to expand my experiences, and to explore unknown territories. Now, filled with a strong sense of patience and realism, I've enjoyed the simple life so richly rewarded in an enviable harvest of love, peace, and laughter. How can you preserve your priceless ancestors' offerings? May I encourage each and every one of you to mindfully fertilize your ancestors' treasures by nurturing the evolving process of life, changing, shaping, and enriching your lives by periodically visiting their gardens, which were so generously seeded with their devoted energies and quiet wisdom. To close this chapter, I'd like to introduce the blessed choice of my life, my husband, Cecil. Cecil, 45 years ago. Cecil, 45 years ago, you literally walked into my life. In fact, the connection with the gardening is we actually met at a one-month-old baby party of one of the growers of Marine Drive, the Joe Wong family. Thank you for not only having been the kindest, compassionate, loving, and supportive soul, but you have also gifted me the key of freedom to guide our destinies. And he retired after 40 years as a pot aspire with Kelly Douglas. The full circle with Burnaby's Market Garden, I want to finally introduce the rest of my bounty of harvest, and of course, on the Full Moon Festival, right? To the Jung, Chan, and Lee connection. This picture was taken 2 months just prior to my mother's passing at age 94. So, first generation, second generation, myself, my 2 boys, and 3 grandkids. And after my mother's death, we were happy to welcome a granddaughter from the youngest. So thank you for the interest tonight.
So the backstory for the Yip Farm actually starts not in 1948, but with this gentleman, Ben Yip. He's my grandfather, and he, from what I could tell in my research, he shows up probably in the late 1870s in the East Kootenays around Fort Steele, Cranbrook, because I managed to find 2 indexes for 2 mining claims that he had in his name, dated 1980, 1981, or 1880 and 1881. So I know he was there at that time. Those this is the tributary off the Thompson, I guess, in an area called Waldhorse Creek, and that this is after all the major mining companies using hydraulic methods they've already extracted all the big stuff, and so they're just with the pan and sluice box and whatnot, doing it the hard way. And so after 2 years, I guess he did well enough to buy a farm outside of Cranbrook, and then with a partner he set up a dry goods business right downtown Cranbrook, and that's where my dad was born. So unfortunately, grandfather dies when my dad's only about 2.5. So grandmother sells the business to the partner, and they head down to Vancouver. So I think they stayed there until my dad was about 16, so probably about grade 10. opportunities in Vancouver for Chinese still weren't great at that time, so she decided to go back to China at that time. So my dad goes as a vet back to China, and I guess the plan was for him to be an herbalist or a Chinese doctor or something like that. So he learned Chinese, and he could actually read and write Chinese quite well. Just from a couple of years study. So, but with the imminent invasion of the Japanese, he heads back to Canada, and so at that in I guess 1944 he enlists, and at that time the British Army, the Special Operations Executive of the British Army, were looking for recruits that had looked like Orientals. It was part of their campaign with the Japanese invasion of Burma. They wanted to counteract that. So this is a special operation that they were looking for, and with that in mind, over 600 Chinese Canadians ship out of Halifax in around 1944 to London, and then they as a British Army Commando contingent, and then my dad goes to Pune in India for final training as a radio operator. So so in the spring of 1945, small teams are inserted behind the Japanese lines. Their task was to monitor troop movements, blow up things when they had an opportunity, and again, just work and try to keep from being captured, I guess. Fortunately or unfortunately, whatever, the atomic bomb was dropped in August of '45. So he stays on for a few more months, helping with the mop-up and things like that. So this is a picture of him with his group. That's one of the medals he got for his role in Burma. So, and I think anyway, so that's sort of the backstory. That's how we get to him getting the farm through the Veterans Land Grant in 1948. So I guess for me, I guess until I started doing this research, and having now done the research, it makes me actually quite proud in that sense that my ancestors were part of several things, I guess. Not only the history of Burnaby and helping fuel the food basket for Burnaby, the enlisting, even though he wasn't a full citizen of Canada, he went to fight for his country, and then that role alone helped was part of repealing the Chinese Exclusion Act, and hence allowing all Chinese Canadians to gain the right to vote and franchise and a lot of other opportunities that they weren't able to access. So, and also I guess I wanted to thank my wife, Gail. She's the one that actually got me. She's been doing genealogy or family research a lot longer than I have, and so I guess a little bit was rubbed off on me. So, okay.
Thank you.